sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello, and welcome to Secular Sexuality, the ACA show that is anything but typical. I'm Christy Powell. My co-host tonight is, of course, Bianca.
Hello.
And true to her word and back again is Black Widow and ace advocate, Miss O'Kist. When Miss O'Kist was here with us in July to discuss asexuality, she told us about her recent autism diagnosis and is here to help us understand her journey of life and love on the spectrum.
Hi, and I'm glad that you guys would have me back again after being on twice now.
Yeah, no question. I'm technically counting that Black Widow episode, so this is a three-peat, right? That's something to celebrate.
I'm like the Steve Martin of secular sexuality.
I'll take it. Also, you guys, we are planning for Thanksgiving, and we're going to be doing another mailbag episode. So if you want to ask a question and have us read it on air, please email us at sex@atheist-community.org by November 19th. So that's next Friday. And you'll be able to get your question in under the deadline there. But tonight, if you have questions about asexuality or autism or just how to do the romance thing, reach out to us here at 512-991-9242, and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
All right, so let's do it. You know, like I mentioned, last time you were here, you mentioned that you were adjusting to a new diagnosis. Tell us your story, if you will.
Whew. Yeah, I think actually when I was on last time, I was in the middle of talking to some people to try and get that, which was kind of a wild ride, actually. It has been like very eye-opening. Like, I get very excited now about learning all this stuff that everyone else is like, I've taken this for granted since I was 5. And I'm like, well, this is exciting new information for me. Yeah, like the COVID stuff has happened. So it's given me a lot of time to sit and reevaluate a lot of things. So I'm trying to figure out, where to go from here. Like, other things I might have done differently if I'd had this information sooner. The answer is yes, probably. So now I'm kind of trying to figure out, what to do from there.
Yeah, well, what signs led you to getting here? I mean, what made you want to get tested or whatever else?
Man, like that's so for the signs. When I went for the evaluation with the adult specialist, I made a list of everything and I printed it out so I wouldn't forget. And there was like 7 pages. So apparently quite a lot. But
yeah, well, and also it sounds like you're a fairly like self-aware, introspective person. I mean, this must have felt like a lot.
Yeah, when I started looking through stuff, because I never thought about it much before, because, like it's something that people generally pick up on when you're a little kid. And I had a lot of problems in school when I was a little kid. So I kind of figured it would have been picked up on then, but I was wrong. And the reason for now was at the end of like last year, I hit like this really intense period of burnout, which I wasn't able to like take some time off or anything. And like by February, everything was just kind of a mess, if I'm honest. And like over the years, like as like a lot of people in my situation, like you build up all these like layers of masks to kind of like cover things, because there's always like repercussions, not necessarily like concrete punishments for like a lot of autistic traits, but like a lot of like a negative feedback loop that's like always running. So a lot of people, myself included, like build up all these kind of layers of protection to hide that side away. And like once like this burnout got as bad as it did, like one of the first things my brain was gonna drop was that, apparently. And my husband,
that sort of masquerade, that's sort of like faking your way through a neurotypical world. Is that a fair way of framing it all?
Yeah, I mean, basically exactly that. it's exhausting. Like, it's something that I know a lot of autistic people do, and I don't think, like, I knew I did it, but I did not realize to what extent, quite frankly. And it was kind of, I think it was a shock to like my husband and a lot of other people when everything kind of started falling away. And my husband's like other partner she's like a mental health professional. She works with a lot of autistic people, has lots of like personal relationships and stuff with other autistic people. So she was the one who kind of started spotting things because she was, around her house a lot. And yeah, so like she was the one who kind of picked up on stuff. And I can't say much about my family because I don't know how much they know about stuff, but I am not a big anomaly in my family. So
sure.
a lot of things that I consider to be perfectly normal things apparently are not for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Can you give us an idea of what was one or two of those things that just fell away and maybe it changed?
It's like a lot of like stimming behaviors, which like they're down in like the repetitive movement things. I personally have always been like a rocker, and I do a lot of like hand flapping a lot. The hand stuff I kind of like had replaced with this one. So if you ever see the behind the back scratch thing, that was like one of my covers for that particular stem, but they started like coming out more. Because normally it was something that was only really happen or I'd let out when I was by myself, but it got to like, fuck it, it's here now. And I was also having a lot of troubles with, I did not know that's what they were at the time, but like meltdowns and shutdowns, which have been a terrifying thing that have been happening my whole life with no explanation. And they're kind of awful and terrifying when you do know what they are. But when you have no idea why, like your brain's like, I'm taking the wheel, and yeah, it was kind of terrifying, to be honest. And they used to happen a lot when I was a kid or when I was a teenager, but as an adult, like it's kind of rare, like every few months maybe. But this was like happening like several times a week. So
Mhm.
that got a lot harder to ignore.
Well,
And
a lot of people, when they're like given a diagnosis, it feels like, okay, they've just been handed a huge problem. And I'm hearing from you that at least part of it was a relief to be able to understand what those shutdowns were. I mean, how did it feel having that, news kind of delivered to you?
honestly, it was kind of the best day ever because like before the show I was talking about, therapy, like I've been in therapy for about 16 years, and I got a long way with a lot of things, but a lot of things just nothing worked, and it was like this perpetual problem, like this perpetual cycle, and I had no idea why. And like getting that diagnosis suddenly put so many things into like perspective, and then I have like something that's actually actionable. Like
Hmm.
I can work on figuring out like my limits so I don't end up burn out to the point where I can't take a shower. And I can like express what I need better so I don't end up like having a meltdown at the North Door or something. Like so it's kind of amazing. It was actually like I finally understood myself, and pretty much like all the 40 years up to that day, it was kind of wild. Like a lot of people are like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh my God, no, I'm not. Like this is actually kind of great. So I mean it's been a lot to adjust to. And there's a lot
Hmm.
of reading and a lot of learning that had went with it. But it's a weirdly positive experience, which is not what most people expect someone to say.
Sure. Well, and I don't want to make too much of a digression, but just to, I guess, briefly touch on the North Door was this incredible venue here in town that you yourself and a number of amazing sex positive performers and just great community kind of formed around that. We're very sad to recently see leave. I was actually a goal of mine for a long time to get the owners and the managers on this show to talk about the culture and the community they created. So just a quick moment for all of those like very beautiful queer-centered businesses that are going through it right now.
I cried when we got the email. They were like,
a little bit.
We're like, can we keep keeping these shows we had booked, not paying? They were like, no, it's like, so that was really disappointing. But
yeah,
who knows what'll happen after COVID?
Well, I am very curious what it feels like now to not just sort of reinterpret yourself and to have like these sort of action items for the future, but to be looking back at your past and thinking like, oh, that's why I did that in high school, or oh, that's what that was.
Yeah, that's been a lot of the last few months. Actually, was going through all that, like all this like weird shit to me, like. Dusty and everyone else is like, yeah, and I'm like, well, this is very exciting. But like, I mean, there was some things like some really like traumatic stuff that I hadn't been able to really work past from when I was like really little, which kind of made sense now. Like I was a very honest child, but everyone always thought I was lying about everything. So if anything ever happened where you were in trouble, I did not have the parent who's like, no, not my little. It was always like, oh, yeah, no, we'll bring her into the school. And I mean, like, when your parents always take the side of like, the kid that accuses you of stealing or whatever, it's like really confusing. It's like, why? But then I realized like, I don't like eye contact very much, which I think came up on the Black Widow version of this show. And I look at the floor a lot, especially if I am in a really stressful situation. So anytime something happened as a kid, I'm like looking at my shoes and getting like my words get weird because that's just a thing that happens. So it probably looked like I was really shifty. And it's not that my parents, for some reason, decided I was like, evil lying monster. It's just that I looked shifty and they didn't know any better. So it kind of reframed a lot of things, a lot of it for the better. Some of it was like frustrating because it's like, well, why did nobody really explore this sooner? But yeah, like a lot of things, even like why weird people would always come and talk to me on buses suddenly make sense. Like it was amazing actually. Like, why did a lot of people think I was flirting with them when I'm not? Because one of the things I do a lot is I play with my hair when I'm nervous, which apparently is a flirting thing. And one of the ways I like to avoid eye contact is looking at people's mouths, which apparently is a flirting thing. And that is why I got accused of flirting a lot, was because I was nervous, looking at their mouth and playing with my hair. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, then I guess they weren't just randomly being angry about this thing. And yeah, like, God, everything, like friends that I'd lost along the way, like I could see what happened. Like it's been a lot of catalog of stuff to kind of go through. I think I've gone through most of it now. I'm sure there's something, but
it's so interesting and sad to think about the people who are like, oh, well, back in my day, people didn't have, as much, like there weren't as many people with autism or there weren't as many people on the spectrum. It's like, no, there were just as many. It's just they didn't get this kind of revelation that right. You have gotten. They didn't get to look at their lives in that context and be like, oh, that's why these things are happening to me. It makes sense.
Well, right. It's one thing to think about the parent that is, having trouble trusting a shifty child, but then to also just think about the pseudoscience of like police interrogations and all these other aspects of our society that are just not interested in being diverse and understanding of different types of folks.
Oh, yeah. Like my friends have all got like if anything is ever going really sideways and you need to call someone for help, never call the police, please. Like there was one name, and I am blanking on the name because I'm really bad at it. I will look it up. But this is one kid. He ended up in jail from a car accident. He's autistic. He'd had like a traumatic brain injury. which, made a lot of things worse. And he got in this car accident, and like echolalia is like a thing where people like repeat something, over and over. And like the guy in the accident came out and was like, "What are you doing? You're trying to fucking kill yourself." So the kid kept repeating that when the cops were on the scene, and he got sent down to jail for 50 years for a non-fatal car accident. And he was recently given a pardon like yesterday by the governor of Virginia. But things like that happen a lot. And because like the police don't know what to do, they're not trained, and a lot of like reactions and body language and stuff is very different to what they're expecting. So like I think a lot of people in the autistic community as a whole are just terrified of the police, like a lot of people in America. But if you're like Black and autistic, it is not a great combo. I'm trying to find his name because
I've got
Matthew
a story
Russian. That
pulled
was
up.
it. I'm like, it's Matthew R. But yeah, I'm bad with names and I'm bad with faces. So.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to that story in the show notes. But while V grabs us a call, because we've got a couple of people looking to call in, I guess I'm just curious with all of these moving pieces about your past, about your future, about sort of the new configuration of the world, how any of this changes how you see yourself.
I think a lot kinder. I was not very compassionate, but like I could tell something was off or different. Like I do, like, some interviews with like a lot of people. Like there was always something, and it was very obviously different. And I was like always trying to figure out why. And like one problem I have is uncooperative face. If I can't see my face, it does its thing. It is not necessarily what I want it to be doing. So when I get like show photos back or video, sometimes I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why is it? Why? So I used to beat myself up over a lot of things. And kind of understanding where it comes from kind of made me a lot more compassionate towards myself, because before I was just like, working on the assumption that I was a neurotypical person that was bad at peopling, but that was my fault. And kind of understanding why some of like these like little weird things would happen kind of makes me less I'm not going to fight them, and I'm able to like accept them as just part of who I am, and kind of be like proud of some of them, because like it's a lot of people do these things and are in a similar place. And I think it would be a lot better for an awful lot of people if we could get to a point where people were more accepting of those kinds of presentations that people might have, and not necessarily see things that are maybe a little different as being bad. And I think like I started showing myself the compassion that kind of think society as a whole could benefit from showing people.
Yeah, I mean, whether we're talking about self-understanding or just a broader understanding of our culture, I think that eventually leads to self-acceptance, and that's a beautiful value to hold on to.
Yeah. So
let's jump into a call. We have somebody here from the Netherlands who's been on the line for an hour and really wants to ask a question. So let's talk with Kay in the Netherlands.
Awesome, let's do it.
Welcome to the show, Kay. How can we help you tonight?
Hello. Hi, I hope you guys are all right tonight.
Doing good. Happy you're on the line. I know it's late over there.
Yeah, it's 2 a.m. Past 2 a.m. Yeah. So I've been like dying to call in, but every time I had like school the next morning, so it was a little bit hard to call in.
Well, I'm glad you're finally doing so. How can we help?
So I'm looking for a little bit of advice. So I have like a girlfriend with very religious parents. And I am like non-binary myself, but I present as female. And so like two females don't really go together in their eyes. And right now they are basically accusing me of being manipulative over her. And that's obviously hurting me quite a bit. And they've known me for about 3 years. I wouldn't say like they know me very personally, but like we've had some good conversations in the past. And so it's yeah, I'm kind of bothered by the fact that I'm not really allowed to go to them anymore, and they're trying to kind of keep her from going to me, and I'm not really sure how to do this right now.
God, that's a lot. I'm so sorry to hear it. What kinds of things come to mind for the two of y'all?
Well, I mean,
if you want, sorry.
Go for it.
No, I couldn't hear you guys. There was like a crackling in the audio for a second.
Oh, no. Okay. Well, hopefully that's better now. Let us know if we disappear on you. But
no problem.
I think if you wanted to be kind of trolly about it, you could be like, well, I'm not a woman. I'm non-binary. Does that make it better? Is that more acceptable?
No, I doubt it, because they're like not really the type to accept like different genders as well, because they're someone that my girlfriend has a friend who is transgender, and the moment they they went into transition, they were like, oh, it's just a phase and stuff like that. They're that kind of people.
Yeah.
So,
oh my goodness. So you can only have a relationship if you conform to very specific guidelines, apparently. Right. You can't be gay, you can't be trans, you have to be a very particular way. And honestly, I mean, maybe it's the fact that it's been a long week and I'm kind of over everything, but like, is there a reason you need them in your life? Is there anything that is holding you to interacting with them and not just your partner?
So right now we are like still doing a study, and we're not living like together yet. So I come in contact with them. Like, I have to kind of come in contact with them here and there. I really want to still open up this communication, because we've had good communication in the past. It's just that since this last half year, since they like now know that things are going on, it's suddenly like in the bad spectrum, and I kind of want to fix that in a way, because I still like want to have nice conversations with my in-laws. So
sure. Well, I don't want to dismiss what you just said about the importance of this relationship, but I think V was onto something. I think there's value in staying in your lane and remembering that your partner's relationship with their parents is their relationship, and you can, give advice. Maybe that relationship isn't so healthy. Maybe it's not so great. Maybe it's spilling over onto you in a lot of ways, and that definitely sucks. But I don't know how effective you're going to be going at this directly. I think this might be between them. And to that end, I think I have to kind of highlight this idea that as an adult, the greatest leverage either of you have in that situation is just your presence. It's a willingness to say, I have some boundaries. I need to be treated and respected a certain way. And if you're not willing to do that, then I'm just out. There may be some value in trying to communicate and express these ideas to them. And I hope that there is. I hope that there's something to salvage here. But I hope you don't feel obligated to it.
No, I don't, because both me and my girlfriend are kind of in the box of, well, if we eventually get married and they don't want to come to the wedding or anything, then that's all right with us. We're not dedicated to solving this. We're just kind of trying to fix things a little bit. She is definitely of the mindset, though, that like they can't really keep her from me in any kind of way, and that's definitely not the case. I mean, we're meeting up tomorrow, so that's not a problem. But
good. I'd say be explicit about that too. If it's a place where you feel comfortable and emotionally and physically safe, say, hey, you have an opportunity to be involved with your daughter's partner, right? You have an opportunity to follow her into the next phase of her life and be a valued and loving part of this brand new family that we're going to be creating. But you don't have to be, right? We're going to continue to do what we're going to do. We're going to go get married. We're going to have kids, maybe, if that's something you guys want to do. And if you don't want to be a part of that, you don't have to. But this is the criteria for joining in. This is a criteria that we have. This is a boundary we need to set. So even being explicit about that and saying, I want a relationship with you. I want to invite you into this family, but here's what you need to do to justify us letting you in. You can't hurt us, especially intentionally, and expect to be allowed into this new group.
It's like, it reminds me of
Yeah,
when
I
my
agree.
when my
Please.
cousin came out, my one member of my family, my mom was not really great about it, and he's like this really sensitive kid, but his like words were along the lines of like, this is not a discussion and it's not going to change. You have you can accept it, but you can't object to it or fight it or expect it to like somehow be reasoned away. So like hopefully they'll like get that message, because I think sometimes people think it's if they argue enough and they fight enough they can change it, but the reality is the reality. And hopefully like if you're that's something that they will come to like realize and stop pushing something that, I mean, it's like trying to push the sky to be purple. It's not gonna work.
Right. And it might take a little while too, right? It might not be an always thing, and it might not be an immediate thing. So you might have that conversation and then just maybe get shut out for a little bit. But then you have to stand your ground, right? And you have to prove to them that you're serious about this. And they don't get to interact with you or see you until they respect your boundary. And it's worked for me in the past, in smaller situations, not as big as a life partner situation, but being able to say, hey, you're going to get to see me, you're going to interact with me after this happens. And they're like, oh no, you're bluffing, I'm going to continue on. No, this is how it's working now. And then finally they come around. And that's a hard process too. And that's going to be stressful for you, and it's going to be stressful for your partner, and it's going to be stressful for the parents. And at that point, you kind of just need to hold on to each other and realize that your relationship is most important. And even more important than that is you yourself. And the parents, they're kind of down here. They don't matter as much in the hierarchy of things.
Yeah, if you're eating, sleeping, taking care of yourself, and giving yourself some space from them when you need it, you're doing a lot to make this process easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we are both doing like the best that we can right now. She specifically, my girlfriend herself, she has quite severe ADHD. So it's kind of hard for her to like go into a confrontation because like she gets sensory overloads and stuff like that. So I get why she doesn't really necessarily wants to go into a conversation about this necessarily unless it comes up. I am much more confrontational in that kind of stuff. So I'm a little bit of the dominant figure there. But yeah, that's kind of where I was going as well. But I really wanted you guys' opinion about this to make sure that I was kind of on the right track. And I definitely agree with your opinions right now. And yeah, I'm taking this on board. Thank you very much for this.
Oh, one thing, if I can. Is it possible for your girlfriend to, I got ADHD too, and I don't do confrontation well. But sometimes I'm building up to a big conversation with my mom, and sometimes like trying to do things through writing helps because it gives me time to get everything I want to say out and then organize in a way that's going to make the most sense. And you have a bit more control over how that message, like the timetable. So if she's in a good place to have the conversation and knows that she's going to be in a safe space and have like the support, you know, from you and everything else that she's going to need to get through that, like maybe be able to send it at a time when the environment is lined up. And it feels very weirdly impersonal, I know, to do things through text, but it's definitely better than when you have the moment where it all goes pear-shaped and it's just like, and then, you know, nothing is getting anywhere. That's what I tend to try and do with the really difficult stuff like that. And I don't know if that's any help at all.
Yeah. It definitely is, because when she was still in church and kind of forced into like the church situation, what I actually told her to do, what might help her, because she tends to forget a lot of things, a lot of the arguments that she wants to make. I told her to like write the arguments down and kind of what would they ask you and stuff like that. And that helped her a lot back then. So that might help her in this case as well. I totally agree. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I do that too. If I don't have the bullet, because when the stress hits, my brain's just like wiped. It's all gone. It's all Post-it notes on a wall, and now the wall is bare. So sometimes I'll just write it all out on paper. I will have it.
I didn't.
So,
No. Online confrontation in front of a camera, sure. Stick me in front of a camera and I'll yell at you all day. In real life, not okay. Not a thing.
Me and my girlfriend are both like writers kind of people. We role play a lot, so we are good on this front. I like the idea.
Well, I love that idea, Miss Okest. I love that. Where it might not be the ideal situation. Again, none of this is ideal, and we can't hold out for ideal all the time. But if your girlfriend wants to express this and is in a position where she can do that through writing, that could be a viable alternative. I've communicated that way with many people that I loved about difficult topics, and it doesn't always work out perfectly, and there's not as much emotional catharsis, but it still gets the point across, and it still keeps that window of communication open while still establishing that barrier of, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to communicate, but I'm going to do it on my terms. And it's not going to be in a situation where I feel at a disadvantage or put in a position of defense.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I have that experience too with some stuff that I've been through, and I got my message across much better being able to write things down, because I knew that I wouldn't forget anything like afterwards. Oh, I should have said this. I should have said this. That kind of a thing. So, yeah.
Oh, all the time. All the time. Doctor's appointments, even conversations like with a internet caller, like, I need to write everything down first. But thank you so much for calling, Kay. I really appreciate the fact that you stayed up so late to talk with us, and that you called in, and that we were able to hopefully help a little bit.
You guys definitely helped. I was quite insecure about how to go about this, but I'm much securer now in my position that I think I'm doing the right thing right now. So thank you guys very much for this. I'm sorry if I sounded a bit tired.
It's after 2 a.m. You can sound as tired as you need to. That's awesome, Kay. I think you're on the right track. And as you continue this conversation with your girlfriend and with her parents, call back. Let us know how things go. If they go badly, then we want to be there for you and give you next steps. And if they go really well, then we love it when people call in and just let us know, hey, things are going awesome and it worked.
I will definitely do that. And I think my girlfriend doesn't actually know that I'm calling in right now, so I think she would love to actually be there the next time.
Oh, yeah. Get her on the phone, too. I love that idea. All right. Have a good rest of your night.
Definitely. Yeah, you guys too. Have a good show.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you are, Christy. Hello.
Yeah, sorry. I had to take care of a little tech issue.
Oh, no worries.
Did you want to grab another call?
I would love to. And actually, this one I think is going to be perfect for today's call. Jake in the UK. Jake, hello.
Hey.
Hi.
How are you doing? Well, I know you're doing good because you already said.
What can we help you with tonight?
Yes, I hadn't really thought about it, honestly, until I stumbled across the thing, I don't want to call it podcast. But basically, I've been like masking throughout my whole childhood, like sort of trying to fit in, and I did it a lot through my young adulthood. And then when you were talking about like burning out, I was like, oh yeah, I do this. And then I kind of got to the point where I was just like no longer, like it was difficult to find out who I am or what I get along with. And I was just wondering if you'd had any similar experiences, or like if there was a way you'd found yourself, so to speak. Good English.
It's great English. And yeah, I have a lot of experience with that. And it's a really hard thing to undo, because, like it starts off where it's like a very conscious thing. It's like, use this set of words and make this face. And after a while, it kind of like it kind of takes over. Like it feels fake, but it's not the same like conscious. It's still like an effort, but it's not the same like conscious control over it sometimes. And it's really easy to kind of lose track of where we were at before all of that started. And if it starts really young, you know, like if you've been doing this since you were 8 and now you're like, I don't know, like your 20s or whatever, like that's decades of this thing. And I kind of like, for me, I kind of started thinking back to the things that I used to do that, and like the conflicts where I started hiding things about myself, or things that I do to make myself smaller. A lot of it is kind of like that, like not talking about the subjects I really like to talk about because people will tell you that that's too boring sometimes. So I made an effort to make a point of talking about those things and doing those things. So I started putting the same like thought process and effort into unmasking that I originally put into masking in the beginning. And it felt kind of weird at first, and kind of scary because a lot of the masks and behaviors, like the behaviors end up being masked because there were, you know, repercussions. Like I don't know what kind of like masking you were doing, and if you want to talk about that can help. But because it's definitely possible to undo. Like, is there anything in particular that you noticed yourself doing, or is it just kind of like a general question on masking?
It's difficult to think about looking back because I always did things to fit in, so I always did what the other people were doing. So when I'm trying to think of things that I enjoy, I'm like, oh, maybe I still enjoy this, but then I go and do it, and I'm like, I hate this. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, I've been doing that too lately. I mean, I think it ends up being a lot of trial and error. Like, I went back and started redoing things. Like, I took up skateboarding again. That used to be one of my big escapes when I was like a little kid and all the way through college. And getting back into skateboarding was like really helpful. And another thing was finding people more like myself. Like there are a lot of, it's just like the same thing as last time, but there's lots of communities online. And I don't know like if your masking comes from like neurodiversity, and if it's like if you're autistic too or ADHD or something. But if I found like communities of people who are a lot like me, and it made it feel safer to kind of just try things out, or even just I'd look at like videos of other people, and I'd see myself in these videos somehow, and it was kind of like an aha moment I didn't know was there to be had. Like I spent a lot of time happy rocking as a kid. Like I like rocking back and forth a lot. I do it if I'm anxious. I do it if I'm happy. All of the time when I was a kid, and eventually I kind of stopped. And I found like being in communities of people who were doing the kinds of behaviors and things that I always did and not feeling bad about it helped my brain just kind of like make these connections on itself. And sometimes if it's like things we enjoy, it's kind of like we can start making them up for ourselves again. Like maybe the things we enjoyed as a kid aren't the things you're going to be into now, but like if there's like something that you're like a little bit interested in, like digging like deeper into that. Like I spent a lot more time with like my quote unquote special interests. It sounds really kind of pejorative when like that way, but like and there's things that like I'm finding that like I still really enjoy, and there's some new things and like new takes on it that I really enjoy. And like just finding people who you feel comfortable being yourself around is probably a good start. And then it's kind of like experimenting again. It's like almost like being a kid all over again and getting a do-over, when people are like, what would you do if you could go back to the age of 10 with the knowledge you have now? And it's like living that,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of wild. But
just way more conscious about it. Sorry.
yeah. And the other thing is, and this was something that I struggle with a lot, and a lot of people kind of seem to struggle with, is the mask me? Because I kind of felt like there's like this me somewhere, and then there's the one that I perform for other people. But like, you're still you, even if you're masking. Like, it's like masking is more like makeup. It changes the behaviors so that people see you a certain way, but you're still who you are. And like, maybe there is some pleasure and joy in the things you do to fit in with other people, like if it's interest based. And if not, I also started talking about that more. Like, before, I'd be like, and my friends would invite me to a Super Bowl game and I would pretend to care. And I'm like, no, Super Bowl, American football is stupid. It is a hill I'm willing to die on. And yeah, just being like, kind of saying the thing I actually felt rather than thinking the thing I felt and then going over the, should I say that or should I say this, and then saying the processed version. Like, kind of let some of the unfiltered stuff out with people I felt safe with. Like, I'm not gonna do that if I was at work with like a boss, but like the people that I'm close with, like, I kind of stopped myself from second guessing everything I felt. And it was like really small stuff to begin with, and I'm still working on it. Like, I've been masking, I guess, for like 30 years or so. I don't know at this point. And I don't know if I'm ever gonna get everything back, but just you kind of
If I can be a therapist about it for a moment, I think that, there may be some value in actively and intentionally trying to deconstruct some of these behaviors. But the through line in everything that Miss O just said is all about self-acceptance. It's about surrounding yourself with people that accept you or accept these things about you, these different cultures and communities that say, this is okay, this is beautiful, this is good. And telling yourself that, hearing it from other people as much as you need to, until you can say it to yourself, that's when you're going to become more comfortable being yourself. And that's a lifelong journey. We all want to be comfortable with ourselves, but maybe not too comfortable. And that's okay. That's part of the process. It's not to go all the way to the other side of the pendulum, but to maybe give a little bit more room for you to be an authentic version of yourself with other people.
Yeah, I really like how this started from somber and now it's all sweet and feel goody. I like that.
Yay.
That's our brand. Thank you so much for calling, Jake.
And Facebook, I kind of hate Facebook for a long time, but there are a lot of really good private closed groups. Like, I'm on a bunch of like autism related ones, and they're complete. No one can see anything anyone is posting from outside the group, and they're like pretty safe spaces. So if there's anything like that would be useful, like, it's kind of worth looking at the groups. Even if you don't want to participate, you can just like read stuff, and that can be a really helpful starting point on like figuring this stuff back out. Because you figured it out once, you found the things you loved, and if you can do it once, you can do it again. I do believe that, and it does get easier. Like, starts off like, I don't know where to begin, but it does get easier, and I think it's, at least for me, it's been a journey worth taking.
Yeah, sounds good.
I love that. Thank you so much for calling, Jake, and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Yes.
Thank you. You guys too. Bye.
Bye.
It's so interesting to, honestly, like, I've never given whether I'm on the spectrum that much thought. A lot of what you're saying resonates to a point where I'm like, I'm gonna have to do some more research, honestly. But what you're talking about also feels very much like how I felt coming out as non-binary, and the idea of masking in a different way, of putting up what what other people expect to see, and regulating what you're doing and what you're saying and how you're presenting, and then realizing one day, wait, there's another person under here, and who the fuck are they? And just having to go through that deconstruction process and looking at, okay, did I inherit this from society's expectations, or is this really me, or are they both somehow, and can I still be me even when I'm conforming to the expectations of other people? This is, honestly, I've been like resonating this entire call, like, yes.
Yeah, we're all handed this like cis het allosexual monogamous identity at birth that doesn't fit most of us, or many of us at the very least. And our neurotypicality is a piece of that convention that is just sort of handed to us, and it's the expectation. So adapting to the actual you, or maybe adapting your world to the actual you, is an ongoing challenge.
It's kind of scary too. It's scary and it's depressing. Like, I remember reading like one blog post, and they were about like masking and the amount of like actual like cognitive space it takes to do. And they were like, and at the end of it, we're not even any good at it. And I'm like, no, screw you, I'm great at it. And then like I watched like an old interview and it's like, oh God, no, I'm really bad at it. And it's kind of like sad in a way. Like, we all do, like, we put so much effort into something and we don't even often do it that great. It's like, and I found that like really kind of a hard thing to get past. It's like, how much of my life did I waste on someone else's expectations? Like, and then it's kind of a lot when you start thinking about it and like pulling it back, like gender. It's like you spend so much time basically in drag, and then have to like and then when you like finally like are yourself, everyone's like, oh, this is all new and weird. And it's like, no,
this is
other stuff was the lie. The apparently not terribly convincing
like, I wasn't even good at that. Like, again, exactly that. I was trying so hard and failing so badly. Christy, do we want to take the last call that's on the line right now, or do we want to jump into the second part of the interview and hold the call for after this section?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead while we're here and take another call.
Sounds good. All right, let's talk with Trent in North Carolina. Trent, welcome to the show. How can we help you tonight?
Hey, yeah, thanks for taking my call. And I am a little nervous, so just bear with me. If I kind of ramble or anything, you can stop me.
No worries.
No, you're good.
Well, first off, I have actually thought that I might be on the spectrum, and then I confirmed my mom like 2 years ago, and she said that she thought that I might have been as well, but she never got me tested, and I haven't really looked into it too much. But I just thought I might mention that. It might be something that I'll look a little bit further into, because a lot of what's been said has been resonating with me as well. But the main reason I'm calling is I have always kind of felt gender dysphoria. I just didn't know that I was feeling it until recently. And it's just kind of grown. And I, just a little background, I live in North Carolina. And, you know, this is a state that is primarily red, very conservative. And so I don't really have anyone that I can, like, talk to. So that's kind of why I'm calling in.
Absolutely. And I resonate so hard with the idea that as soon as you realize you're feeling gender dysphoria, it gets so much worse. You're like, there's a thing. It's almost like if you feel a bug bite and you're like, oh, I'm really itchy for some. Oh, it's a bug bite. Now it's itching a lot, right? And so I guess my question for you is, when you talk about gender dysphoria, what is the direction that it's kind of leading you in? Is it more of a, I feel non-binary and like I don't fit in any box right now? Or is it more of a, I feel like I should be, say, another binary gender? Where is it leading you right now?
Yeah, I was born male, but I've never liked being male. I've never really like associated with being male. It's just kind of like always been something that bothered me. And then my girlfriend, who has been very supportive, we kind of been opening up with each other, and I expressed like just like a kink that I had about like being dressed up as a female, and we explored that, and then it just kind of evolved from there, where it just I identify more closely to like femininity instead of masculinity. But I'm not sure like where I'm at. And it was probably like 3 months after that I kind of understood what gender dysphoria was, and kind of that's when it like all hit me all of a sudden.
Yeah.
This
Oof.
was more than just a kink for you. This is like a big piece of your identity. It's kind of how you're seeing it now, yeah?
Yeah, and like looking back, in my past, there's like a lot of signs that kind of like it seems obvious, but it's like you don't have a word for it, and you can't like put it all together.
Mm-hmm.
So first, I want to say, and this might go without saying, but it's worth shouting out anyway, that not every coming out experience is the same. And we kind of place this really one-note narrative, and it might correspond with what you've been feeling, but it might not, where from the age of 3 that you were different and that you should have been a girl, and like all of this very concrete, I know what I am and what I need and where I need to go from here and what next steps are. And some people have experienced that, but it's also just as normal to experience this as more of a gradual growth and realization process, and realize, oh, very similar to, again, the conversation we're having today around being on the spectrum. Oh, that's why I did these things. Oh, that's why I was looked at like that. Oh, it all makes sense now. And it can be just as gradual. And whether you know exactly where you want to go, or whether you just know what you don't want, following that innate sense of gender euphoria and gender dysphoria, and things that make you feel like you, and like you're being seen, and like you're being you're finding yourself, right? And the things that make you feel like you're being stifled or maybe covered up, just following that very slowly at your own pace is really the most you should be doing right now. There's no commitment to anything at this point. You can decide tomorrow that it was a kink after all. You can decide tomorrow that, you know what, you're going to go for it. You're all in. This is who you are now. Or you can take the next 5 years just playing around and figuring it out. But I do want to make sure there's no timeline here. There's no expectation. And whatever you feel comfortable with is what you should be doing at this point in time.
Yeah, and things don't move just in a straight line. There's plenty of takesies, backsies. If you want to wear a dress today and a suit tomorrow, that is completely your prerogative and perfectly valid, and very uncommon among non-binary folks. So, nothing to be concerned about. If you want to cut your hair, it'll grow back. If you want to grow it out, you can always cut it. These things are perfectly acceptable.
Okay. And yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm struggling with, is like finding that pace, or finding out like where I want to be exactly. And like I said, being where I am, it kind of makes things a little bit more difficult, because I grew up in a very religious household, Southern Baptist. And I've been an atheist for like about 3 years, maybe 2.5. And I haven't really told anyone in my family, of course. And actually just 1 week ago, I kind of had a mental breakdown and about the gender dysphoria, and didn't know, I didn't have anyone to like call or anything. I called my mom, and she drove all the way down, and I, told her what I was experiencing, and she was supportive and everything, comforting. But then, she's also like, well, you can always look to the Bible for support. And I'm like, no, not really. I haven't told her that I'm an atheist. I'm more nervous about that than gender dysphoria. But that's, it's just kind of hard to, when I can't talk about it to, other people, kind of makes it more difficult to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Trent, one of the things that I want to make sure that we offer you today is the online community that Secular Sexuality has built. We have a Discord. We have a Facebook group with people who watch the show and have gone through very similar experiences, usually alongside deconverting from a religion. And we're here every week as well. And if you find yourself in a position where you need to talk to people, unfortunately, COVID makes it difficult to go find real life, like in-person groups, but we're here online and we're available to you no matter where you live. And I know a bunch of people are already eager to talk to you and kind of be there for you.
Okay.
Also,
Great.
one thing,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
I know, you go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing that might be helpful is instead of trying to look at the big picture and say, where do I want to end up? Because that's a existential crisis nobody needs right now. I would suggest journaling. Just every day, write what you feel like today, right? Some days, I feel very masculine today, and I feel like I'm comfortable in my body today. I don't have to worry about yesterday, don't have to worry about tomorrow. What are you feeling today? And only focus on that one day and doing what feels right for you in the moment. And then maybe when you're ready, go back and read through and say, oh, 2/3 of the time I felt very I felt very feminine, and half that time I put on a little makeup or maybe a little bit of a like ladies' underwear or something, and I started playing around in that space. So maybe that's telling me something.
Yeah, well said, V. While we work on getting V's connection back together, Trent, I hope that resonates for you. I think that could be a really beautiful practice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I've done journaling in the past for other things, and that's helped in the past. So definitely something I could do here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I just had one other thing. My girlfriend, who has been very supportive and has been with me, but she's grown up in like the same situation, religious household and everything. And so she just wanted me to ask any suggestions on how, like, she wants to make it feel like more normal, and because she wants to be supportive, but she wants to make it feel like it's normal, where I guess like right now she doesn't feel like it's a normal thing.
Yeah, that, sorry, I think I cut out a minute before. Came back and Christy was wrapping up my point for me really neatly. So thank you, Christy. I appreciate that. I think that this is going to be an ongoing conversation, and normal can't happen overnight. The reason things are normal is because we're used to them. That's the only thing that normal means is, oh, this is something I feel comfortable with because I've been exposed to it often enough. So it's not going to feel normal right away. And that's okay. It's not supposed to. And I think as long as you guys are committed to figuring it out together and being open and communicative with each other, it'll start to feel normal. But just like I'm saying about the whole figuring out who you are process, it's useful to take it step by step, and remember that you can do takesies backsies if you want. And it's not a straight line. It's not a line you have to get to in 5 days or 5 years. As long as you guys are okay, and as long as you're taking care of you and your mental health, then this can take as long as it needs to take to feel normal, to feel stable, to get set up in a position where you feel good about who you are, both in the relationship and out of it. I think it can be very exciting in a way, and feel like it's going to reduce the anxiety and the uncertainty by getting to the end, right? And saying, okay, we've got it all figured out. We're all ready to go. This is what we are. And now we just have to get used to this thing. But actually, it is a process of constantly figuring it out and making sure that you're taking enough time to do justice to every step.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, guys. It's made me feel a bit better about everything, talking it out and everything. So I do appreciate it.
Thank you for calling in, and please check out our online groups. And as you continue to have questions and talk with your girlfriend, then call back. Let us know how things go. We want to be there for you, maybe not in person, but at least online.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you so much. You have a great night. Well, that is just a lot to kind of process. And I know that sort of self-acceptance piece is what we're talking about tonight, and like how to, be okay with these various pieces of yourself. But without like preempting you, Miss O, I guess I have to say that it really is a lot to take on, and that it can take some time. And it's okay to go back and, need to rewatch this clip of the episode for our past caller or whatever else, whatever you need to do to process it bit by bit.
Yeah.
What has been some of your experience in just getting adjusted to some of these ideas?
Gosh, I think at first, a bit like the last caller, it's like I would like to be at the finish line and have it all figured out. And then I'm like, okay, well, that's not maybe not going to happen. So it's piece by piece, and it's been a lot of work, actually. I had to put a lot of kind of like, it's almost like taking its own, like it's like studying a whole new subject, but the subject is just the world. And so yeah, I've been doing a lot of that. I lost my train of thought. Where were we again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just that, I mean, it's not like one piece of yourself. I mean, it is in many ways, but that it really encompasses the whole world. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah, that's one of the big things, like the autism, like the autistic community will talk about is identity first language. Like all the books and everything's like person with autism. And then we get into we can cure it. And it's like this weird idea that all autistic people are neurotypical people with like this added on piece of software. But it's like an entire way, like the brain is mapped out differently. So you can't take that away and have like the same person. And I think like that's been kind of a lot of it has been like trying to figure out, losing it again. My brain is just, I'm not sure.
It's your brain's ears are burning. I mean, that's what we're here to talk about in a lot of ways. What I am curious about in this like large worldview shift is how this has impacted your relationships. Like, obviously, you've talked about being more comfortable being yourself around friends, but there's a lot there, yeah.
Yeah. COVID has made that weird. I can say like, for me, me and my husband, that has become night and day amazing, so much better than I actually thought it would be, because for so long we kind of assumed that we were both kind of working from the same playbook, and everything was kind of like on this even footing. But it's like discovering we were not so much not in on like the same page as even in the same like user manual. So I've been spending a lot of time learning about like communication stuff, like I guess I'll list like neurotypical communication. I did not know how bad I was at this until people actually, because no one will ever tell you when you do something wrong. Apparently that is rude. They assume you'll figure it out. So yeah, a lot of arguments. Like, so for years, we've been together 18 years. So for a really long time, we've both kind of felt like we were like being gaslit by the other one, because we would go into like a situation and it would go badly, but each person had like such an incredibly different view, where each one of us was the asshole in one version. And so like just learning like communication stuff, and I'm not very good at like figuring out my internal workings. So I'm like alexithmia. It's like I don't recognize other people's emotions very well sometimes, but I really don't do well with mine. And it is not real-time processing as a general rule. It can take like weeks to figure out what the heck I felt like about on Tuesday. So I've been trying to figure out how my stuff works and then trying to explain it to him. And it's been making things a lot easier. Like just dumb stuff, like if someone rings a doorbell and he's like, oh, Nikki's at the door. I'm like, yes, she is. Which comes across to him as me being an asshole because he's asked me to go open the door. And I think he's an asshole because he told me a thing, I agreed with him, and he's yelling at me. So like that, I mean, if you think about how often that kind of interaction can happen in a day, it is a lot. So like, I feel like we're actually starting to understand each other for the first time. Like there were some really big fights that we would have regularly, and I had no idea why, and he had no idea why. So it's kind of really improved that. Like we can communicate in a way that we understand, so we both get what we need out of it, whether it's the door being answered or, me getting my questions answered. I ask a lot of questions. A lot of autistic people ask a lot of questions. And I have learned that to a lot of people, that comes across as either manipulative or rude. Like if someone's like, we're doing this, da, 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 and you're like, okay, but why? And when? And what about? And everyone's like, stop trying to change. I'm like, I'm not. I just really, really want to know all of these things before I agree to the thing. And I want to make sure I'm doing it all right. But yeah, so like getting rid of all those little things, it's been kind of awesome. Like I can talk to him, and now like I actually know what he's talking about. I thought I did and I didn't. And the same with him. Like it's like almost like meeting each other again.
I love that.
Yeah.
And there's this weird thing where like people assume that if you have the perfect relationship, you don't need to communicate. Like you just know, right?
Just
like,
natural. Yeah.
And it's the same with sex, right? It's like, oh, you don't need to communicate. You'll just know. It'll just be this chemistry that runs through it, and all of a sudden you'll just like be on the same wavelength. No.
Why?
good relationships, good friendships, good sex, all of it hinges on the ability to communicate with each other. And I think that puts a lot of people who might not be neurotypical at a very big disadvantage as well, because then you're like, oh, well, this is a normal relationship, right? Because we're communicating just as much as this other couple, and actually we need to be completely shifting and looking at it in a different way.
Like I'm really scared and curious for post-COVID world, because like relationships are difficult, like your intimate relationships somewhere else, but like friendships and stuff, like there's been like a lot of weird like walls and a lot of things that I've missed historically, which I'm starting to kind of understand better. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens. Like I do pretty well like making sort of friends, like where if we're in the same place, we will exchange banter. That's doable. People getting out of those conversations with me, it's a lot harder. They're just gonna have to walk away because we won't stop. But like it's always been really difficult to get past that, and it's like everyone's best acquaintance. So like understanding kind of some of the reasons those patterns have existed means that now like if I want to, I can try and like change the script a little bit and actually like deepen those relationships with people. Like self-disclosure is a big thing. Like you got the small talk thing, which everyone hates. I hate and I'm bad at. Like my idea of small talk that I thought I was really good at was, like, so existential question, like, what do you think happens when we die? Like that's not small, apparently. That is really big talk. But people will talk about themselves, and I've now learned like you reveal a bit about yourself, and it's like a quid pro quo thing. But I've never really known how to do that. So it gets stuck where people will tell me like intimate stuff about themselves, and I'm like, oh, that's wild. Nothing back ever. So as a result, like I think a lot of people think I have been very disinterested in getting to know them better, which is a lie. It's not a lie, it's wrong. Like and I'm like sitting here going like, I don't know why no one will ever invite me out to the things unless I see them. And like I'm like, oh well, I never did this step. Or the one we're talking about, I think before the show started, where I'm supposed to express interest so that they know I want to go, and that was the invite, but I totally missed it. Like I get invited to a lot of pub quizzes though. But like, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what happens when the world opens up again, and I can actually talk to people, and when they do the thing, I actually know what the thing they're doing is. That's going to be interesting. And I'm also kind of nervous too, because I don't want to put all the masks back on. It was very miserable and exhausting. So exhausting. And I like people, and I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, but I don't want to keep doing that. It was like literally killing me. So it's gonna be weird. Like everyone's had this like idea that is set. And I think when we go back out into the universe and their expectations will not be met necessarily, I don't know how that's gonna go. And I suspect some people will probably disappear, but people have been disappearing from my life anyway. But I think like I'll be able to actually bring a lot more people in and have them actually know
show
who I
those
am.
people, show those people like a real version of you.
Yeah, like people give their summary like, "Oh, you're so ... and I'm like,
am I?
No.
Did I? Yeah.
Like not at all. And it's weird when someone you really care about, and they care about you too, but they have this person they care about isn't you. And it's a really lonely place to be, because you've got all these people, but the person they like wasn't you. It was like whatever construct they came up with. So you kind of like you can feel like totally alone around friends.
Yeah,
Which is,
forgive me if this metaphor is off base, but in so many ways, it sounds like you have been kind of given this secret code. Like all of a sudden, you see the Matrix, and it makes me think about those videos of folks who have a cochlear implant for the first time and are maybe hearing for the first time, and that can be very beautiful, but also incredibly overwhelming. And I guess I'm curious if this has been a stressful experience in that way, all of a sudden having like this filter, these sunglasses taken off on your world.
Yeah, it's been a lot to adjust to. And it's kind of like it's like I don't want to like change who I am. But it's like there's all this new information now, and I have to do something with it. And like normally like we learn to do this slowly. You're like 3 and you're like, hey, do you want to be my friend? And someone's like, sure. I'm like, here's candy. Brilliant. Got that down.
Transaction, done deal.
And then you kind of move up, and it's kind of like I'm like 40 now. So on this stuff, I'm supposed to have like my PhD and be able to, I don't know, raise a child. And I'm like suddenly kind of finding myself trying to figure stuff out, like, hey, I want your candy and I want to be friends. So it's like, yeah, it's like starting from scratch, but you're expected to be an expert. I guess it's like adult learning. Like, it always sucks because you're used to being good at things, and now you got this thing, and it's like, I want to be at adult stage now, but you still got to do like your years of practice.
Well,
So
and all of a
like,
sudden you've introduced this like code switching paradigm because it used to just be, a lot of masking. And now it's like, well, I'm going to intentionally put on this mask in certain circumstances, but that intention is using up a piece of your brain.
yeah, a lot of it too, apparently. Like, someone like was like a psychologist, I don't know, one or the other, and they were talking about like the amount of like resources that, because we've got finite resources, which way you can't juggle and watch TV and read a book and hold a conversation and like try and shift your cat with your foot at the same time. Like, your brain's like, we got this much to process, and eventually you run out of space, and like all of this space has just been used doing this like one thing, and badly. And so yeah, it's gonna, I mean, I guess maybe I've got the space to implement or like decode all the stuff I'm learning. I can like decode with the stuff that I used to spend not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I love doing this, by the way. It's been really difficult to not do that for a long time. So that's kind of nice to have back. And I think people will probably not enjoy that, but yeah, like it's weird. It's a lot of information, and
Well, and it's a new identity to try on and to kind of switch back and forth with and to understand. And I guess I'm very curious. Research seems to show us that people with an ASD diagnosis are more likely to identify as ace. We don't really know if that's entirely true about autistic people or if it's just sort of the way the research is skewing right now. We don't really understand why. And I guess I'm curious, as somebody who identifies as both, just how you keep those identities separate, or if they do feel related, or what that feels like for you.
yeah, that is actually something someone had brought up on my Facebook, I think. It's kind of weird. Like, I think there is like a lot of people, asexual people, like to very much downplay that. But like my experience, like one of the reasons I started looking into possibly being autistic before all of this stuff happened was from meeting a lot of autistic people in the ace community. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I've done that all my life too. And it was like, okay, so I really resonate with this one group of people, which means there's a lot of those people. And yeah, like the numbers are higher, and a lot of people don't like that fact, maybe, but it does seem that they're higher. In fact, like I think research shows like autistic people are more likely to be like trans or non-binary or have like other like gender, and or just be a member, like another identity on like the LGBTQ, like,
or really just rejecting that allosexual
Right.
cis het identity that we mentioned earlier. And so it could just be that autistic folks are more willing or perhaps more able or have more of a necessity to be authentically themselves in these different ways. And so it's definitely a curiosity.
right.
But the two do go hand in hand
yeah.
for so many folks,
Yeah.
and that's a challenging, I think, thing to keep in both hands at once.
Right.
Like I think for me, I would say that like there's probably a link between the fact that I'm autistic and the fact that I'm asexual. Like a lot of like sensory processing stuff is very different, and I think I'd like talked about like difficulty recognizing like emotions and things like that, and a lot of social constructs. Like a lot of things about relationships are somewhat social. Like there's instincts there, but like there's no real inbuilt instinct that says, hey, to propagate the species, I'm going to buy roses. It doesn't make sense biologically. It's got to be a cultural thing. So I think like a lot of romantic like gestures and things like that are very social. So it would make sense perhaps that a lot of people on the spectrum maybe read things or look at things differently. Like they're not taking these like social constructs at face value. And I think
Right.
like with the sex stuff too, like a lot of like the sensory stuff, like the side of like the autism thing, it's like everyone thinks about like loud noises, I hate them, and like bright lights and things like that. But there's like a lot of other senses, like like proprioception, where the body is in space, and interoception, like what you can actually physically feel, like inside and what's going on. I am really bad with those ones. Like, I got no idea what's going on in here, to be honest. And like I could see maybe that would have some role to play in how I'm asexual. Like everyone's like, but you could orgasm, right? And I'm like, I can. It's fine. And that blew my therapist's mind. She was like, never had someone say that, like, it's fine.
It's fine.
It's totally great. But have you ever drunk a fizzy water and skateboarded down a hill? Like, it's
Yes.
So like maybe because I'm autistic, there's some, it's the reward of sex isn't quite there for me. I don't know. And like one of the weird things about like autism specifically is everything is pathologized all the time. Like there was some research that came out this week. Someone did like a study about like, I guess like amoral behavior and money. And a lot of the people who are autistic would not take the money to do the thing that was against their ethics, even if it was an awful lot of money, which I might take away as a strong sense of, a strong code of ethics. But the takeout was, does not understand social rewards. And it's like, really? I don't. So it's like everything ends up like fine. If it's different, it's
Where
bad.
did that come from?
So I think like with the asexuality stuff, if you got a lot of autistic people who identify as asexual, then the medical community is going to want to put it back in like the, DSM, whatever comes next, as a problem again, because now it's like a thing to be cured and you can't be asexual, you're autistic. It's a symptom, not a. But the thing is like my experience of the world is my experience of the world. So I experience the world as an asexual person. Doesn't matter if I'm also autistic, because that's still like these two things still can exist separately as well as together.
Sure.
And I think like it seems to be a thing people like to do. If some like a lot of like the autistic trans people, oh, you can't possibly know, you don't understand enough about the world to know that you're a boy or a girl. It's like, yeah, you still know how you feel about things. Like maybe
the frustrating thing to me is that all of these words are just descriptions of how people feel and function, right? Like, it's like, I am using these words because they best describe what I am. It's not that there is no prescriptive weight to these words. Like, you are ace because that's what you are. It doesn't matter how you get that. That's who you are.
And it's like, you can't take away the autism. So even if the two are linked, what does it matter? I'm never going to be without one, so I'm never going to be without the other. So why does it matter? Like the social ramifications are still the same. And I think that's something that like I understand why it gets, but it's like the concept of the gold star asexual. That's someone who is young, so it's not a sex drive thing. Able-bodied, so it's not just physically thing. They're neurotypical and mentally healthy and all of these things, and then no one can like touch them. But like the moment someone is say like
it's everywhere.
It stops being considered valid.
And it's like if you're old, you're like, oh well, you're too old. Or if someone is considered undateable, it's like, oh, it's because you can't find somebody. And it's like, no, you can be asexual and literally it can intersect with any identity at all. And I get why like the community sometimes downplays it, because I think it only got taken out of like the DSM like in the last edition. And even then it's like these blah blah blah, this is still a disorder unless they self-identify as asexual. So we're on that kind of like iffy ground of like, are we going to be in number 6?
Right.
And people are kind of worried about that. And I get that. But a lot of asexual people are autistic. And I think it does a disservice to not only a large part, perhaps, of the community, but maybe one of the more vulnerable ones, like one of the ones that maybe needs some more understanding. Like, people love talking over autistic people. That is something I have learned in these past few months. And it doesn't even matter what it is. Like, if you want to start a fire on the internet, bring up the puzzle pieces, which autistic people fucking hate. And watch non-autistic people get very angry about why autistic people need to shut up about it. And I'm like, well, just stop using the damn puzzle pieces and this wouldn't happen. Like, so yeah, like I feel it's important to give like a decent voice to autistic asexuals. I love you guys. You're awesome.
You are an awesome spokesperson for them, if I say so.
To that end, if somebody is watching this right now and they just found out or about to find out, like, what should they file away for being in a relationship with an autistic person? I know every individual is an individual, and I really don't want to stereotype or generalize, but is there anything that you and your partner have learned through this experience that you feel might be useful?
I mean, one thing is obviously the communication thing. Another thing is like I hate like the functioning, but a lot of it fluctuates. Like if I'm having like a really like A+ day, I can do incredible things. If I am having like definitely like a D- day, sentences no longer have grammar. Like everyone's like it's either verbal or nonverbal, and a lot of people are somewhere in the middle. And sometimes it's gone. Like I don't have that. So like maybe it will depend on the individual. Maybe some people don't, yo-yo quite as much, but things will be different. And just because everything was really easy this one month does not mean today it will be. And I think people have a hard time accepting that because everyone's got this idea that everyone's trying to pull one over on someone. So if you're like, I really can't do this thing, and it's normally something so ridiculously benign to a lot of people, like phone calls aren't going to happen. If we go for a phone call, there's 100% chance that I'm going to be like having a very intense moment somewhere, and it's not going to be great. And that kind of thing too happens. Like a lot of reactions do not seem, I'm told, proportionate to what is going on. Like, so you kind of have to accept what the person is telling you is real. And also, maybe it depends on the individual again, but like the way I show like caring and concern for people is a little different, and some people would probably feel very abandoned sometimes. Like I don't know what to do. If someone is upset, like there's a lot of platitudes, and I don't like them very much because it feels really inauthentic. Like the way I show someone I really like them is not, self-disclosure in conversations. It's I will drive you all over Austin for several months to every doctor's appointment until they figure out what is going on with this thing. Like that's how. So if you're like,
how you express care,
right? So like maybe if someone's really upset, I'm not gonna have the right reaction or the expected reaction. So sometimes I think in like mixed relationships between like autistic and non-autistic people, or even like ADHD and non-ADHD, any of these things, is learn to see things differently, maybe, because you don't really look for these, like show like the way people show their emotions or that they care. It's like this code, and it's just there, and you just recognize it. And if the codes are different, it might involve like recalibrating what those things are going to look like. Like I love very, very, very deeply, but outwardly it's very difficult sometimes for me to show that. And yeah, I think if you're in a relationship with someone is like got a different brain wiring, like there's a lot of learning and kind of unlearning, but I think it's kind of worth it. Like a lot of like autistic people are kind of awesome. And the first date is not going to go great, perhaps. My first dates never turned into second dates. For a reason, I am sure. But like, it's stressful. And if people are stressed, they're not their best. And if like I'm stressed, I'm very not my best. So I think like trying to give people a chance and the benefit of the doubt. Like, if someone does something that is incredibly hurtful, is there a good outcome reason for it to be hurtful? Because if not, there's a good chance it's just not what they meant. So I think you've got to be kind of flexible. And I mean, I'll admit, like, I'm a lot. I love my husband a lot. But like when I had like the sort of burnout thing, it was really bad. And I'm still not great right now, but I was like I was not useful. And he had to pick up a lot of the slack. And I still feel kind of terrible about that. But like, it's just different. And but I think it's rewarding. And like they always talk about the deficits or whatever, but there's a lot of positives. Like, the autistic people I've met are fiercely like loyal and like care a lot. Like, I will not bullshit my partner. If I say I will do a thing, I would literally break the earth to do the thing. Like, the follow through is so strong. And like
we talked last time you were here just about how this part of yourself impacts your sense of style, your eye for fashion. I mean, some of the just ways you view the world, and I have to imagine that comes into the way you view people, the way you view people that you love, and relationships as well. That you're just seeing it from perhaps a different angle from your partner and from other people in his life. But that there's still that there's really a lot of value in that different angle, that different perspective.
I mean, I love being in a relationship that has both, because we get to see, like, it's like the app, the Be My Eyes app. Like, we get to be each other's eyes, and I'm like, look at this amazing thing, and you get to enjoy so much more. Like, I'm gonna fixate on weird little details that most people do not care about normally, but like, he gets to enjoy that too. And I get to enjoy like all the stuff, that like he sees. And it kind of opens up a lot, which I think is kind of amazing. Like, I was reading an article on like the whole manic pixie dream girl trope, which is, people have been friend zoned. I've been manic pixie dream girl like my whole life. Like, I'm a broken, cynical man, fix me. And I'm like, and
I don't even like the Smiths.
Right. But like, someone wrote like that was like a lot of the things that get put into those characters are like sort of like AFAB-y autistic traits. And like, yeah, I think people kind of like end up looking for that, and it can be really fun, but kind of miss the people. I think people miss the people a lot of the time.
Sure.
But or at least that's what it seems like. Someone's talking about the Love on the Spectrum show. I haven't watched it. And on about like the cute, like weird music. And they were like, these are adults dating. And it's got the same soundtrack that one would use for an adorable baby elephant. And I'm like,
oh God,
that's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's a whole attempt. It like, there wasn't like that like star that's like all like, there was an attempt, like, yay, representation. Also, stop, please.
Yeah.
Like, I know some people like it had like a mixed bag. Like, some people were like, no, and some people were like, I thought it was kind of cute. And but yeah, it's like, I think people kind of maybe miss the humanity sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if secular sexuality is here to do anything, I guess it's to shine a spotlight on a just diverse type of person, a diverse type of relationship, and the different types of people that love each other in different ways. So I appreciate that you came on to share all of this with us. Before we let you go, I want to see if there are any particular resources you'd like to recommend, and make sure that people know how to find you online around the web.
I think I put them on my wee slide. So the Autistic Advocacy.org is the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. It is an organization run by autistic people, and it has a lot of really good information on there, and they do like a lot of work for the autistic community. AWN Network is the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, because they found like a lot of differences between the gender, but it's more called like atypical at this point because gender is messy. And especially like if you were not a cis white male, that one is a really good place to look. And Neuroclastic is a platform it's about autism. It's written primarily by autistic and neurodiverse people. And if you want to look into anything like autism related, trying to talk to the autistic community, because a lot of the lived experience is very different to the textbook experience. And Neuroclastic is great for everything. Actually, if you're in a relationship, there's a lot of articles on communication problems. There's like a lot of information there. And if you think you might be autistic or on the spectrum or neurodiverse in any way, they have a great directory for people, diagnosticians that specialize and have been recommended for adult diagnostic, because there is not a lot for grown-ups. This is the most frustrating thing. Everything you look up for is going to be about your child. And I'm like, but what about me? and like part of that is like organizations like Autism Speaks is not great. And
It's just
there's so much effort putting into like this tragedy narrative, like where parents are still being told to grieve when they get a diagnosis for their kids. And I'm like, your kid can still be amazing. Like even nonverbal people have a lot of understanding. Everyone thinks that people don't, but like there's a lot of nonverbal autistic advocates out there, and not being able to speak or whatever. Speaking is not like a prerequisite for a fulfilling life.
Wow.
And,
that hits really hard. That's a beautiful way of terming it.
Yeah. And I think like find autistic people. If you're a parent and you've got a child, there are a lot of Facebook groups like Autism Inclusivity, which is a bit like the Find My Eyes app. It's like Be My Eyes. It's like, my kid keeps doing this. Why? And it's like, well, is this situation happening? Well, yes, we have fluorescent lights. And I'm like, I'll look into that first. And it's kind of helpful. And they're there for grown-ups too.
wonderful.
But I cannot remember. It's like a screener that I want to say, if you go like the site's name's not great, but like aspitests.com or .org. It's like a long test. It's one of the screeners a lot of the doctors will use. They used it as part of like my diagnosis. And you can fill it out yourself. There's a lot of science behind it. It's been revised because of like gender biases and everything else. It won't necessarily give you a diagnosis, but it will give you a good indicator of whether or not it's something to look into. And if you're curious and have like diagnoses in the past that don't fit, a lot of like women non-binary people have ended up with a laundry list of bizarre diagnoses. I have not filled my bingo card entirely in my lifetime, but like I got.
There's still time on the clock. Yeah.
I still need the BPD. I haven't had borderline personality. That's the most common one a lot of people get. But but if you think like maybe misdiagnosis has happened, like check in on it and write things down, because the process can be kind of intimidating, and if you don't have it written down, it can be hard. And because I went through one interview that was a train wreck, and then I redid it with notes. But like write everything down, and also definitely look for people who work with adults specifically, because it's different. There's not a lot out there, and not a lot of people know what to look for. They're like, you're not a 4-year-old boy who likes trains. Get out of here.
You're not autistic.
What are you talking about?
Well, I should mention to anybody listen to the podcast that we'll make sure all of these links are in the show notes to this episode. But also, I guess I need to make sure to get a copy of that title card, because that picture is fantastic.
Right,
for anybody listening to see it.
Oh my goodness. I love that so much.
That is just magical. Yeah,
beautiful.
thank you to our crew for getting that back up there. I also want to take a moment to share the crew cam and
crew
thank
cam.
all the
Thank
people
you,
that go in
everyone.
doing this together.
Yeah, I think we all took turns ducking out of the screen for some reason or another, and they were right on top of it. So thank you.
Cobbling together a coherent broadcast, even as all of our individual computers fall apart and they shake their heads at us from afar. We're incredibly grateful to them and incredibly grateful to everybody watching.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I guess this is that time, that moment to encourage everybody out there, allosexual or asexual, neurotypical or atypical, to go out and give themselves a big old orgasm, or better yet, give somebody else one.
Yeah, they're fine.